will still work for that fact. So keep those things in mind. But we have to be where the job seekers are. So right now, especially for those of us who maybe hire minors or younger employees for their seasonal work, we have to make sure that we are connected to that applicant pool. And I know that, we used to say that technology, that would be a newer way to do it, but now that's really the main way, of course, to recruit our staff. So we want to make sure that we're on apps and we're on social media to definitely be a part of that recruitment strategy. And the other thing to keep in mind is the phones. As you can see in our picture here, that is where most of our job seekers are looking. They're not going to really be at a desktop too much anymore. So we have to keep that in mind for whatever technology we use whenever we are recruiting for our seasonal help. Cast a wide net, as big as you can, get yourself out there. I know it seems kind of funny to advertise on TikTok, but the reality is a lot of businesses are doing that now. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all of the different ways that you can promote your open jobs on social media is definitely the way to do it. And of course, Indeed.com. Everybody usually starts there. It's a free service, unless of course you pay to have your position sponsored at the top, but it is a free service that I always recommend that as a first place to go. Your company website, put those on there, especially for the younger generations. They want to see that you're current. So I have here at the bottom to make sure your job postings are current. That is so important. I don't know, even if you're not even looking for a job, but maybe you're looking for a certain business to do work with, if you go to their website and they still have, happy holidays and it's July, you start to think that maybe, are they open? Are they not staying on top of things? So always keep those job postings current and keep those websites current. Connect with the high school guidance counselors and of course your career services departments at all of the colleges and universities. Most of them all have a free online service, and we'll get into the specifics with that when we talk about internships. And of course your industry professional organizations, whatever professional organization is specific to you. You want to make sure that if you're a member of that you utilize all of the services that they have to post those seasonal jobs. This is important. Whenever we're hiring people at our place of work, sometimes it seems to take forever, between the application and the interviews and any sort of background screening or maybe a drug screening. Whenever you're looking for seasonal help, that has to really be sped up. We have to speed up that hiring cycle because the chances are that those candidates, they're interviewing at other places, especially if it's their first job. They're maybe putting in applications in 10 different places. So you want to ensure a smooth hiring practice with some quick decision making. This is going to be a little bit different than when you're looking for somebody throughout the year or for more of a more professional position. So just some tips for this. Maybe have a shorter application that still checks all the required boxes, but maybe isn't as lengthy as long as the application that you have throughout the year. I always recommend having a seasonal help job fair. This eliminates on scheduling interviews, phone calls back and forth, or texting back and forth. If you have a seasonal job fair, then you're going to be seeing people from 1 to 4 on a Saturday or something like that, and then that way you can get those steps done on that same day. You can get an interview done. If you do drug testing at your business, have a relationship set up with that organization that you do to get those things done. Have your seasonal employees from previous years there, kind of helping you to talk about the process. And if you can't offer on the spot pending whatever background checks you're going to do, call them back ASAP. You for sure want to just tighten up the hiring cycle when it comes to your seasonal employees. And then, of course, a lot of the folks that we're hiring for seasonal jobs, they may not have all of that experience that you would typically look for in maybe a full-time position. So just some, lighten up on the interviewing a little bit for these folks. Why are they interested? What are their expectations? For our minor age applicants, get examples from things that they've done in school, their sports, their clubs, any volunteer activities. Those types of answers are just as important. Don't expect experience on all of our entry-level jobs, but of course, still be clear on what your requirements are. And here's my document. And make sure you document all of your hiring decision-making just like you would any position throughout the year. So what are our seasonal employees looking for? Money and extra money. So typically our seasonal employees, they're looking for some additional income. It could be their only income. And that's usually, the main needs. But what else are we looking for? References, especially again, for our younger applicants. They're looking for references for other jobs. They're looking references for school. They also want some work experience. We all have to start somewhere. They're also going to need flexibility with other responsibilities. So a lot of times people are juggling maybe more than one job, juggling a sport with practices, juggling going to school in the summer. So we do need some flexibility with other responsibilities. And of course, you want them to have a place to come back to next summer for sure, or the next holiday season. So a lot of times, especially, with maybe our small businesses that are clients at the Small Business Development Center, they can't offer these, high paying gigs or rich benefits. So we have to think about other ways to make the seasonal jobs more appealing. So we want to offer some flexibility that we just talked about, some training, some upskilling, some, an opportunity for them to learn maybe other positions at the place of work. And of course, everybody loves those discounts on products or services and whatever it is that you have. So really think creatively about what you can do to make your seasonal opportunity stand out. Every industry is different. We're not all an ice cream stand. So not all of us, may think, gosh, I don't have anything, but we can, but we really can. So, and of course, retaining our seasonal staff. A lot of times what happens is we lose a lot of seasonal workers mid-August, and we still have a few weeks to go to finish out the season. So a lot of companies will offer some sort of summer stay bonus in order to keep people maybe through those September weeks that we need them there. Maybe offer them a couple of days of paid time off for the summer. A lot of times our seasonal employees are still going to take a vacation. And that is definitely a recruitment tool. If you can say that, even though you're only with us for a short time, we will still give you a couple paid days off. Any sort of gift cards, of course, the company's swag. And then when they do come back for the next season, have an incremental wages for your summer employees. So to show, that you want them back and you appreciate, everything that they've done for you. And of course, those free uniforms, we really can't expect our summer employees to shell out, for those uniforms. That's not everywhere. I know there's exceptions to that, but try to do that as much as we can. And of course, the freebies, we definitely want some of those freebies that we can offer. And then you're not going to be able to offer big promotions, but there's always opportunities for maybe a lead or a senior of a certain position, especially if they've been with you now for a couple summers and now they're coming back and maybe training some other seasonal employees. That's a great way to show that you recognize the experience that they're gaining with you. A genuine commitment to work their flexibility as much as you can. That is definitely a way to retain them, and some great opportunities for cross-training, for them to learn something new, for them to maybe shadow a manager or anything like that. Think of this as a win-win for the employee and the employer. So you want to be a great place to work. You don't want to just do like all of these things just at once to get people in the door. Really take steps year-round to ensure that you're a great employer. Keep tabs on what the competitive wages are for these summer employees and any other perks that maybe you hear other companies giving. So, and then really the key is we want to retain these summer employees, we want them to speak positively about their experience they had with you. And if they can, you want them to come back. Stay connected with all of these with all of the employees that you have, whether it's on social media, whether it's on text, whether in the wintertime, maybe you send a postcard to their house saying, hey, we're excited to see you back next summer. Here's the date for summer orientation, keeping them engaged throughout the year so you can get that early commitment from those summer employees. So you're not scrambling at the last minute to get everybody back. So you know, hey, you're coming back, are you coming back? But staying connected in a positive way. So what are some of the employer-employee relationships that we need to talk about? I spoke earlier about how we just can't push aside all of the labor laws and the different best practices that we know we have to follow. These things all apply to our seasonal employees. But how does the relationship change? The most important thing is we want the employer to approach this employment agreement with the understanding that it's temporary. So whether it's a 12-week summer camp, whether it's agricultural position, whenever the time period is over, the seasonal worker will be terminated. So we want to make sure that that is an expectation that is upfront on both accounts. So, and you know, typically any sort of aspects of traditional permanent employment, such as promotions and raises, and some sort of career path, those should not be expectations of the employee. And you don't want to give any false expectations about that. Hey, if you stay, there might be a permanent job. You know, as much as maybe we want to say that, we really should not give any false expectations. Really be clear when we're talking to these seasonal workers about what they're going to be doing and when they can expect the seasonal job to end. Now, that doesn't mean things may not change along the way, but there should not be any surprises at the end of the season. So let's talk about employment law. So it may not be the most exciting topic, but of course we know this is necessary. So most employment laws that protect the rights of our permanent employees also apply to our seasonal workers. Now we don't have time today to get into every single type of employment law, of course, but I do want to hit some of the highlights today. So here are some of the responsibilities that we really have to remain the same when we talk about our seasonal workers. So the first one that I want to address is protecting your seasonal workers from discrimination. Now, we all know that we are not permitted to discriminate against our applicants and our employees, nor should they face any sort of workplace discrimination from others while they're on the job. This, of course, applies to our seasonal employees and, of course, our state laws in Ohio. So, now we may be thinking, well, of course, but what happens is when we have a group of temporary employees, we sometimes tend to be a little loosey-goosey when it comes to some of the laws that we may take for granted throughout the year. And for a lot of these folks, this is their first job, or there may be their first job where they're actually working with others and actually at a real business. And they need to be aware of these types of things that maybe, you know, horsing around or anything like that is not going to be acceptable. So just again, you do not want to expose your business to any sort of liability because of not having the right training for your employees, seasonal or not. So let's talk about safety for a minute. This is another thing that we all know is so important in businesses and can really expose the business if it's not trained, if there's not a safety training for everybody. Think about that as well for your seasonal employees. While they may not have the time to have a full-on safety training that you would have for all of your full-time, it is very important to make sure that there is some sort of safety training in their orientation. So many accidents happen just because of lack of training and a rush, and inexperience on the side of the employee because maybe they have never worked in this environment before and they do not realize the hazards and the risks. So again, you want to protect your employer, you want to protect your employees, make sure there's some sort of safety training and that it's documented that you had it. Now, let's talk about the Fair Labor Standards Act for a minute, because for those of us who are kind of in the know on this, we think of this as having to pay minimum wage, having to pay overtime, et cetera, et cetera. So again, with our seasonal employees, make sure that you're classifying the workers appropriately. Sometimes with businesses, they may tend to just make their seasonal employees independent contractors. We think they're only going to be around for a couple months. I don't feel like putting them on payroll. It's too much of a hassle. But that really may violate the standards of the IRS if you do that. So let's not be tempted to do that. We got to put these folks on payroll. And also to think about exempt versus non-exempt. So in other words, our hourly employees versus our salary employees. Another thing that sometimes we might do is, again, I'm just going to make all of these summer employees salary. That way I don't have to worry about tracking their hours. That's a no-no, unless, of course, they're in a legitimate salaried management position. So we want to make sure that we're paying them for all of the hours that they work, because 9 times out of 10, a seasonal employee, it will not meet the requirements of being a salaried employee. And then, of course, paying overtime. Most of us know that overtime is any hours over 40 hours in a week. Same thing applies for our seasonal employees. There are no exceptions for seasonal employees when it comes to the Fair Labor Standards Act. So how can we ensure that these things are happening? We want to make sure that these seasonal employees understand the importance of counting for all of the hours that they work. Make sure there's some sort of training so that they understand this. This is so important. Have your policies in place, make sure they sign off on it. There's your documentation. Sure, your members are trained so they can speak to that and to the importance of a seasonal employee. Again, if they're new out there in the working field, this may be something where they don't realize how big of a deal this is. So we want to make sure that they understand that. Again, any training that you provide them. So if they have to come in for orientation and they have to come in for certain trainings before they get started, this should all be compensated time. None of that should be on their time. If you have a couple different locations, maybe 2 different restaurants or 2 different areas that your seasonal employees are going to be covering, make sure that overtime is calculated for all of these areas. We can't separate couple hours here and a couple hours there. It definitely should be aggregate. So a lot of times we shift our seasonal employees around. So let's talk about the ADA for a minute. This is actually going to be our next webinar on June 24th, and we'll get to that here at the end. But again, this is something, that applies to our seasonal employees. So the ADA applies from the first day of employment. It does not require that the employees work a minimum number of days or hours to be covered under this. So again, we have to make accommodations that we are able to make under the ADA, even for our seasonal employees. So I wanted to make sure that we understand that. And that's why it's so crucial to make sure that our job descriptions are up to date so we can have those essential functions for our positions. So this is a big one. Train your seasonal employees on the company's anti-harassment policy. This could seem like, oh my gosh, this is a big deal. We don't have time for all of these trainings, but we really do not want to expose yourself to any sort of harassment claim for any employee, and especially just because we didn't have the time to train them. And again, thinking about the seasonal employees that we have, this may be their first job. They could be coming from somewhere where they're not used to having to not be so, like I said, loosey-goosey, the way they talk to each other. This is so important that they understand this from the get-go. And really, you're training them for any future job that they may have. So again, this may seem like a like, oh my gosh, this seems like we're going over the top here. But it is important to make sure that you talk about this in their orientation. If you outsource your seasonal workers, which I know some places do, that way they kind of don't have to worry about the payroll aspects of it because somebody else is handling that. Make sure that you become a partner with that vendor and that that they're doing all of the things that we just talked about. You want to make sure that, again, that they're making them W-2 employees and not contract workers. And you probably have this, but if you have a contract with these outsourcing agencies, you want to have a clause in there that really just protects your business if there's any sort of fallout from them misclassifying employees and not paying them appropriately. So if we're hiring minors for some of those gigs, and as we know, minors are anybody that's under the age of 18, so 17 or younger, there's going to be a lot of information on these next few slides. So just so you know, this information comes straight from the poster that you should have hanging in your business if you are employing minors. And I always suggest just having it anyway. It does not hurt to just have the poster up. So that's where this information is coming from. I just broke it down so you could see the highlights and just have a little bit more of an understanding. So a minor is anybody who's under the age of 18. So if you are hiring those folks, just listen up here for a minute. No employer shall employ a minor for more than 5 hours without a rest period. So that's something to keep in mind. If you do hire minors, you have to have a list of all of those minors, and it has to be posted in a conspicuous place where all of the other minors have access. Now, that might be something that seems silly, but that is the law. You want to have that list up. You have to, of course, keep a time book in all of your written records showing their start times and their stop times, and we have to keep these for 2 years, and you're probably doing that already. So let's talk about the restrictions of the hours. I get this question a lot from some of my private clients and also some of our clients through the SBDC. How much can a minor work? That's a big question that we get. So if you're hiring anybody who's 14 or 15, that seems to young for an employee, but sometimes golf caddies and different things of that nature, you will have employees of that age. So no person under 16 shall be employed. And I highlighted number 2, 5, and 6 because this pertains to the summer. So no person under 16 shall be employed before 7 or after 9 from June 1st to September 1st. So those are the hours there. And again, we're talking about 14 and 15-year-olds. And then, of course, no more than 8 hours in a day and no more than 40 hours in a week, okay? Now let's talk about 16 and 17-year-olds because this is typically more of our minors that we hire. So no person 16 or 17 who's required to attend school shall be employed before 7 a.m. on any day that school's in session or 6 a.m. if the person was not employed after 8. So basically they can't do night shifts while they're in school is basically what that's saying. Again, this pertains to when they're in school. So as you can see, if they're not in school, these two things do not apply. So what are the prohibited occupations? Sometimes we hear about that. Well, what can they do? What can they not do? For 14 and 15, it's a long list, as you see here. So if you hire 14 and 15-year-olds, you need to be aware of all of the things that they can't be doing. Loading goods from trucks, anything in manufacturing, transportation, working in engine rooms, and that type of thing. So this is for all minors. So for those of you in the call today who hire those 16 or 17-year-olds, these are all of the things that are prohibited occupations for all of our minors. So if you look on there and you see something that that's your industry and maybe you're not quite sure, that is something that you would want to dig a little deeper into to find out. You can always contact us at the SBDC if you need any clarification on that. So what are all the things that minors need to work? So these are the 4 documents they need in the state of Ohio: a minor wage agreement, a minor work permit, pre-application form, a physician certificate, and the parent guardian consent form. And you can find all these forms on www.com.ohio.gov and under Find Forms and Publications. Those are all on there. This is the poster I was referring to before. Basically what I did was broke out some of the highlights on those last couple slides. You want to have this posted with all of your other labor posters that you have hanging anywhere that you have employees that are under the age of 18. And the PDF to get this poster is on this link right here that I have posted. If you just simply Google State of Ohio minor labor laws, the PDF will come up. It's free. You do not have to pay for this, no matter what you get in the mail from those poster companies that say you need to pay for them. You do not have to. Okay, so we'll get into our second part of our webinar today. We're going to be talking about internships. So let's talk about some internship best practices. And the reason why we kind of lumped these two topics together today is because a lot of times our interns are working throughout the summer, and a lot of these laws can apply back and forth. So why do we have internships? Okay, what's the purpose of them? Well, a lot of times it can create a pipeline for recruiting, for a company's specific business needs. It's a great way to do that. But it's also a great way for not only the employer, but also the intern to really discern if that's a good fit for them. Some folks may have an internship and decide that's not even, what they want to do anymore. So you never know what could come from an internship. But these are usually the two reasons why most businesses have internships, is to really start looking at different prospective employees after their internship is done. It really can be a win-win situation if it's done effectively. A positive internship experience is really a chance for an intern, for a student to be immersed in a company's culture and really see if that is the company they would like to work for. Maybe they're learning that's not the type of company they want to work for. And is that really the industry that they want to work in? Again, it can really be a nice formal screening process for any new hires. But what I like to point out, especially for our clients at the SBDC, is it really puts those underrepresented industries in our small businesses on the students' radars. It gets their name out there. A lot of times our smaller businesses may not have, the ability to attract or the funds or they're just the name recognition to get some interns. And this really is a great way for small businesses to get their name out there. So what an internship is. So what an internship is a great way for students to get real world experience in their particular career. It's also a way for an employer to recruit potential new hires upon graduation, and it's a great relationship builder between your business, your community, and all of the local educational institutions. But what an internship is not, and I think we need to just talk about this just as long, is it's not free help, right? It's not the replacement of a paid employee, and it's not used for busy work. So if we're looking at this list right now and we think, oh, that's what I thought an intern was, free help and someone who will do the work so I don't have to pay somebody, and someone who can get all that filing done that's been sitting there for 5 years. That is not in effect, that's the definition of an ineffective internship. So let's talk about how to have a positive internship experience. So what do we want our interns to do? We want to have a planned, meaningful project that aligns with their academic goals. Again, not busy work. We really want to look at what they're focused on, what their career aspirations are, what they're majoring in, and then really have a nice, meaningful project. And think of something that's a short-term project. Usually internships are anywhere from 8 to 12 weeks typically. So you want to make sure it's a project they can get done in that time frame and that you have time to evaluate that before they leave. So just some basics of a well-planned internship. You really want to make sure that it's promoting the learning. It's not, again, just getting work done for the business. It's really promoting learning. This is also a great opportunity if you have an emerging leader at your organization. Having them manage the interns is a great way to have them try out their management hat. I always advise that, instead of throwing them right into a manager position. Make sure that your interns are working a certain amount of hours. Now, I just want to stop here for a second. A lot of schools will have their own requirements in order for the intern to get academic credit. So that is something that the hours piece, you may have to work directly with the school. You want to make sure that you have a formal evaluation. And when I say formal, I don't mean it has to be long and drawn out. What I mean is you want to have some sort of sit down evaluation on their project that they did and how their summer was while they were with you or anytime they were with you. And again, typically they're earning academic credit, but that is not a requirement to have an internship. But again, if you are willing to offer that academic credit, you do have to work with whatever the guidelines are from the university that the intern is coming from, as they all might be a little bit different. So you want to make sure that that intern matters. We're not just throwing them in, again, putting them in a room by themselves and saying, go through these 37 files and pull out every time it says this, or nothing like that. We want to have it meaningful. We want to prioritize them, give them feedback. If they're doing a great job for you, tell other people, expose their work at meetings, make sure you point them out. And really expectations should be set before that intern starts with your company, with who they're going to be work with, who they're going to be reporting, what area they're going to be in, of what you expect from those employees that you have in terms of working with that intern. Make sure the environment is welcome and that those interns are treated as members of the team. So, a lot of times, we would budget for this, of course, right? If we're paying our intern, we're going to budget for this. We can think of this as its own business unit or its own department, because it is going to take some time to come up with what the project's going to be, who's going to manage them, what are the goals and objectives, and defining the criteria. So we can think of it like that. Again, this is a great project for an emerging leader in your business. Again, be clear who's going to be involved with the intern's progress and what their roles are. So here's a big one we get sometimes: to pay or not to pay. I think in the olden days, and let's see, even the 90s, we didn't pay interns. So in short, really a best practice is to pay the intern at least minimum wage. And I want to say right here, most schools will require that you do if it's going to be for academic credit. And again, that's a relationship and a conversation that you'll have with the university. But keep in mind that this student is typically paying tuition because this is academic credit. So to not pay them on top of them having to pay for the credit, it probably isn't a best practice. So the Department of Labor has stepped in and has said, if you have all intents of not paying your intern, you do have to meet this 7 criteria that I have listed here. This is the specific straight from the Department of Labor in order to pass this test, in order not to pay. And I point out number 2 and number 3 because number 2 says the internship provides training that would be given in an educational environment. So the burden would be on the business to prove that this training would be something that they would actually get in a class. And then again, they have to be entitles them to academic credit. So those 2 things right there would be difficult if you decided you did not want to pay. So what does our successful internship look like for your business? Well, you need to decide that. What makes it successful for the business? Is it getting new hires when the internship is over? Is it because you want to build relationships with area schools? So if you start doing that, then for you, that means it's a success. Does it mean that you have a positive images with candidates and now you're getting a lot of interns, which is great? What does it mean for you? Does it mean that your emerging leader that we talked about had a great experience? That is a question only the business can answer. But these are 3 typical ones that would be a great way to measure success. So how would we actually do that? We want to do some exit interviews. You may do these for employees that leave. Do them for your interns. They can give you great feedback. A lot of times they may not have anything to lose in terms of talking about certain areas where maybe they saw things that other employees may be hesitant to say. So have that conversation when they leave. See if there was satisfaction there. Talk about their cultural experience and if they felt included, and if not, why. Again, they may say some things that some other folks may be a little hesitant to say. Would they recommend this internship to their peers on campus? You know, that's if they say no, let's talk about that. Let's find out why. And of course, we want to make sure that we're soliciting continuous feedback. Just like all of our employees are different, so are all of our interns. There may be some different needs that we might have to go and see. We want to make sure, again, we're having a positive experience. We don't want them to start at the end of May, leave at the end of August, and never have any other conversation with them except hello and goodbye. We want to make sure we're checking in. And then again, if one of your goals was to make sure that you got some great new employees from this, calculate that. You know, how many interns were eligible for full-time offers and how many of them accepted? If you have a large intern group, we'll just say maybe even 3 or 4, and all of them were offered positions and none of them accepted, that may be an indicator for you as well that maybe the experience wasn't that great. So what's important is that that intern walks away feeling good about your company and the experience that they had with you. So of course, here at YSU, we have an online platform, of course, called Handshake. A lot of colleges and universities have online platforms to advertise their internship. They're typically always free. There's different software platforms. You would start by going to the school's website, and you want to maintain those relationships, especially with those schools that have the degrees that you often hire for: engineering, accountants, social workers, any of those different fields where they are typically graduating that field. So here's the link here if you're interested in our YSU interns. Again, you will be getting these slides. And here's where you can view about the internships, a little bit about the majors, a little bit about the requirements. But I do recommend that you definitely reach out to Christina O'Connell. She's the Career Management Director, and this is her email and phone number. The first thing you would want to do to get in touch with our YSU students is to register as an employer and request access to Youngstown State. And then prior to posting your internship, you want to talk to Christina and have a conversation. Make sure it's a good fit. Make sure it's meeting all of those requirements to make sure that it's something that a student can get academic credit for. If you are interested in any other area other than what falls under the Williamson College of Business Administration, Christina will connect you with the right person. So some final reminders before we leave today and get into if we have any questions. Begin your recruitment as soon as you can for your seasonal employees and your interns. Keep in touch throughout the year. Again, we still have to follow all of our labor requirements, make sure we're doing those trainings for our seasonal staff and our interns on all of those company policies and safety programs that we talked about, and keep up those relationships with our local schools and universities for both of those applicant pools of seasonal and interns. These are just some of the websites that I referenced today for your information. If you wanted to read a little further about it, and again, you'll get the slides. So all of the links that I sent you will be on there as well. So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat box. I want to thank everybody for coming today. I will stay on for another few minutes or so. If anybody thinks of anything, I will be here. Again, our upcoming webinars are June 24th. We're going to be talking about ensuring an accessible workplace for your employees and applicants. I referenced the ADA earlier today, so we're going to be talking about ADA requirements. And then on July 22nd, we are going to be talking about employee training and development and how to establish a good training and development program for your staff. Please register. This is the link here to register, but you probably will be getting an email on these as well if you're in our email list. And I want to thank Pat at the Small Business Development Center at YSU for sponsoring this webinar today. And again, my name is Joanna, and this is my direct line and email if you have any questions. And I will throw it back to Jenna to see if anything came over.
I just have a question pop in. It said, could a manufacturing company create an internship where the goal is to introduce a student to a career in manufacturing that is production-based and not project-based?
Okay, what I would say to that is you can definitely create an internship that is specific to your business. So in your case, manufacturing that is production-based. The only issue would be if the student came to you and they went to, Youngstown State, and that particular major said, you know what, that's a great project, but we can't recognize that for credit. So that would really be the only issue, but that doesn't matter. You can still have an internship at your place. It's just that the student would just, they would be there for you for a period of time and you would probably pay them. They just wouldn't be getting credit. So, but if that's like a deal breaker for you, you want the person to get credit, then you might have to change it a little bit. So yes, you can definitely have an internship based on whatever your internship description is. It's just whether or not the person will actually get credit is not always going to be up to you. It would have to be up to their school as well. So, and that would be a great internship, I think, actually. Thank you for that question.
So I think that rounds out our Q&A. And as Joanna said, please feel free to contact us at the center there with Pat's email, or even reach out to Joanna too. And we look forward to seeing everybody at part 3 in our webinar series. Thank you, Joanna.
Thank you. Thank you.